Hey guys, it's Vanessa. I'm here with my next wrap-up of things that I've read this year. This one is going to contain, I think, 9 things, so I should get started. The first thing that I'll talk about is a poetry collection titled Poisoned Apples by Christina Hepperman. This really had nothing that groundbreaking for me, and I think that the main audience is really younger girls. The tone that Hepperman uses here is really sardonic and sarcastic. It discusses beauty standards, eating disorders, harassment, unwanted attention because of the way that you look, as well as lots of other issues that are really important for young girls to hear about. The next thing that I read was Paper Girls Volume 2. To me, this volume was so much better than Volume 1. I think it had to do with the fact that we focus so much more on the girls and on their relationships with each other, so I got to know them on a different level, and I was able to create an emotional connection that I didn't have with them in Volume 1. There's definitely still sci-fi in here, and especially how it focuses on time travel, which I really liked because it allowed us to see those time travel tropes that I so enjoy. This includes like people who are taken from their time and being put in our present day, their future, without them understanding what's going on in the culture. It does it a lot by like having Hillary Clinton for president signs in the backgrounds of yards. There's a girl wearing a Tamir Rice shirt. It helps us in present day be in the mindset of, you know, this is our world, but these girls that are time traveling have no idea what we're doing. I love when movies, TV shows, and books do this. I just find it really funny to have a character come to our world and be like confused and lost while we're in on the joke because we know what's going on in our culture. So I can't wait to continue on onto Volume 3. I've already put it on hold at the library. The next thing that I read is My Life with Bob by Pamela Paul. This is her memoir of her life as a book reader and as a book lover. I think I'm going to make a whole video that focuses on some of the quotes that I wrote down while reading this book that I think you guys would like because you guys are book readers like me. So overall, I thought this was an enjoyable memoir about her growing up with a lot of siblings, about her studying abroad, about her marriage and divorce, and about her losing a family member that was really important to her. So she tells us about all of these life moments, but she also tells us what she was reading while these life moments were happening. And that's kind of her main point in this book, is that we read things that reflect our lives, and we also remember things that we read and connect them with moments in our lives as well. So books are really integral in her life and in the way that she recalls memories and occurrences that happened to her. The next thing that I read was Through the Woods. I thought the art in this was so beautiful. If I could pay to have it on my walls, I would. But the downside to this is that I did not really care for the stories. They didn't really live up to the beautiful illustrations, sadly, and I thought a lot of them were downright boring. I would say read this just because of the art, but I wouldn't say come to this expecting really amazing magical stories. The next thing that I read, I actually do have a copy to show you, and it's Everything is Teeth by Evie Wyld. It's illustrated by Joe Summer. I enjoyed the art in this one too, and I think this one did really interesting things with the illustrations. It used 2D black and white to show us Evie and her family, and then it showed us 3D colorful art to show us the wildlife and like the dangerous things happening and like the sharks that she is so scared of. It made these sharks and the wildlife seem that much more threatening, you know, added to her whole metaphor of what these sharks really mean. I really liked that this was very introspective. It was very quiet. The only thing that really hampered my experience is the fact that when it tried to really make a full-on point about what she means by these sharks, she was very vague. There were about 5 pages left when she started making her points about what these sharks mean and what she thinks about them now that she is older. And I think I wanted a little bit more reflection. As someone who really values subtle stuff, and you can see that in like all of my reviews, whenever I mention subtlety, it's something that I really like. This one was a little bit too subtle, so what is it that I want really? The next thing that I read was What the Heart Knows, Chants, Charms, and Blessings by Joyce Sidman, and the illustrations are by Pamela Sagarensky. This is a poetry collection that is mostly aimed at children, but honestly, I felt that anybody could read this. I thought it was such a lovely poetry collection. It is divided into different ways that we use language to kind of get something, and I'll read you a little note that she puts in the beginning. Since the earliest human history, we have used language to try to influence the world around us. The words invoke and enchant come from early words for voice and song. We've chanted poems and songs to help win battles, bring rain, bless journeys, and ward off evil. We may no longer believe the words can make crops grow, prevent illness, or keep rivers from flooding, but we still believe in the power of words themselves. So they're all divided into these sections. One is chants and charms, one is spells and invocations, one is laments and remembrances, and the last one is praise songs and blessings. The poetry was simple but very evocative, and I really enjoyed the way that she used repetition, and there was a rhythm to her poetry as well that made it seem like music. I found these really joyful, and they left me really optimistic. They made me feel like I could conquer new things. I'd never really felt that poetry could do that or invoke those feelings in me. I also have to point out how beautiful the illustrations are, enough for this book to be published. Like, if I could just look at these illustrations by themselves, I'd be fine. They're so pretty. So I'll read you two little poems that I love the best to see if you might like this. This one is called Song of Bravery. This one's not a sure thing. I'm not bound to win. I don't think I'll ace it this time. I won't break a leg, make my own luck, or reach the stars. The sun is not shining on me today. The force is not strong. Before the day is out, I'll taste the grit of dust. Maybe I didn't do all I could, or maybe I did, but there were others who did more. Maybe I'll never know, but here I go, bones clicking quietly together, blood flowing dutifully, from heart to hands and back again. Here I go, stepping out through the door of my own shadow, into the glare of the arena to face the lions. The way it sounds, I love the way it sounds. Here's another one, it's called Invisibility Spell. It goes, when taunting eyes chill me, when laughter stings like sleet, let my blush blaze hot, melting each frozen bone. Let heat pour from my fingers, turning snow to puddles, puddles to lakes, lakes to sultry mist. Who needs this heavy coat of shame? Beneath it I burn with beauty. It is spring, I belong to the air, I step from my body, invisible. We all need invisibility spells sometimes when we feel embarrassed about something that we do or shameful about something that we do. Next thing that I read was the Unbeatable Squirrel Girl Volume 1. I didn't have that many expectations going into this. I thought that it was going to be kind of how I felt about Miss Marvel. Like, yes, it's good, but I don't really love it. This one, I actually really did enjoy it. The humor in it is really lighthearted. There's also these meta footnotes at the bottom of each page that are so tiny you can barely see them, but they add to the story as well and make jokes about storytelling and making a graphic novel. So the characters were really amusing. I liked the storylines. I like that she tried to gather an understanding from the villain. Instead of being just like sock and punch, you're captured, she wanted to get to know them and wanted to come to like a consensus and have both people get what they want. I also really enjoyed that this was set in college. I don't know, for some reason I thought they were going to be set in high school. I think that gives Squirrel Girl just a little bit more maturity, so I will get to Volume 2 soon. The penultimate thing that I'll talk about is A Colony in a Nation by Chris Hayes. This is a nonfiction book whose main argument is that we live in a nation, the United States, that also has many different little colonies in it. The way that we code this in our language is by talking about neighborhoods that are sketchy or like rough areas, or when people talk about bad schools, these are all coded ways that we are talking about the different colonies that are existing in this United States of America. In these colonies, minorities don't really have a fair opportunity. There is a deeper police presence. There's also just in general a lot more violence, and these are all kind of enclosed in these colonies. I thought this argument was really interesting because I think it's really true. I also really valued that this book was so accessible and honest. Chris Hayes is a good communicator, and he also presents moments from his own life that help explain his points. As part of the nation, he has had it so much easier than people who live in the colonies. He also has a big section where he discusses broken windows policing, which I've heard of the term, but I never really understood how it works on a day-to-day basis and how police use it on a day-to-day basis. The whole point of it is to make everything look nice, and if it looks nice, that means everybody in the neighborhood is going to keep up their area looking nice. You know, there's no chaos and decay because there are no broken windows. He kind of says F that, and he says, broken windows offered an elegantly simple and eminently implementable program. No need for messy discussions about integration, equality, racial justice, and capital flows. No need to face the wrath of angry parents at town halls furious that their kids were being sent to a bad school 30 minutes away. Just start enforcing order and the signal will be sent to criminals to behave. So I think he goes down some really interesting paths. I think my problems were that the way that he talked about this was very unstructured. Each chapter doesn't have really a main idea for the most part. It's kind of a stream of consciousness, and he'll end a chapter and he'll say, here's why, and then you'll go on to the next one and he'll just start talking again. I also thought that it kind of was a little bit meandering towards the end. He kind of just started discussing a bunch of random things. He even brought up like sexual assault on college campuses, which I don't know how he got that in there, but he did. So he kind of takes on a lot here and in just 250 pages. The last thing that I read was this really tiny book called The Trouble with Reality, A Rumination on Moral Panic in Our Time by Brooke Gladstone. She divided this into a couple of different sections, so unlike A Colony and a Nation, this was a little bit more structured, even though it was even shorter. The first section focuses how we view our own realities and how different people could have different realities, which is not something that you'd expect, but I think that she argues it in a way that is convincing. We all kind of listen to what we want and read what we want and have our own day-to-day experiences that all come together to inform our reality. She also focuses on how sometimes we dismiss things that go against our worldview and that there's science to prove it. In the second part, she focuses on the out there, so going away from the in here. In the out there section, she compares Aldous Huxley to George Orwell, and she basically argues that we are living in Brave New World, not in 1984, like a lot of people are discussing in today's day and age. She also describes ways that Donald Trump has followed the demagogue playbook, which I found really interesting because she uses interviews that she has had on the media that I have heard, because that podcast was like super invaluable to me during the run-up of the election. For her talking about Michael Signer, who is the author of Demagogue: Fight to Save Democracy from Its Worst Enemies, he is actually the mayor of Charlottesville. It was interesting to me to make that connection that he is the mayor of the city that is going through these times. I really overall respect Brooke Gladstone and I really love her podcast. I think she's a little bit more pessimistic than a lot of people are. She kind of believes that we create and live in our own realities, and she does give some thoughts on what we can do to make it better, but overall I think she remains pretty pessimistic. If you're at all interested in politics and what's happening today, I think this is important. So that is it for me. That is the last 9 things that I read. I need to make these shorter, to be honest. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye bye.